Okay, hello everybody. Thank you again for joining us. This is our first webinar that we've conducted from home, so I'm delighted to be able to bring it to you. What we're going to be talking about today is how publishers are creating, selling, engaging and distributing during COVID-19. As I said, it seems to be quite a popular topic as we've actually had the most registrants for this webinar that we've ever had. So really appreciate you joining us wherever you are in the world and wherever you're located too. So the presenter today is me. I'm Ben Edwards. I'm the SVP of Business Development. I've been with PageSuite a number of years, and what that really means is that I am able to speak to a whole range of our clients right across the globe, from big brands such as LA Times in the Far West through to regional publishing groups, independent newspapers and magazines, literally talking to clients in every corner of the world. Like I said, from LA right through to Fiji, every time zone we cover. So I will be presenting today. A little bit of housekeeping first. This is being recorded on Zoom, and you will get a recording direct into your inbox, which you can then share with your colleagues if it's of interest to them. There will also be a Q&A at the end. So on your Zoom panel, there is an option where you can ask questions. Feel free to do so at any time during the webinar, but I'll answer those at the end if that's okay with you. So what have we got in this webinar? Well, we've got 6 main areas that we're going to be looking at, plus one bonus other section before, like I said, actually moving into the Q&A. So we're going to be looking at what publishers have been doing regarding opening up their content with subscriptions, advertising, how they're coping with some of the distribution challenges we're facing, how they're creating content and some of the production issues, as well as organizational challenges and their responses to that. So without further ado, we'll crack on in with the good stuff, which is looking at how publishers have started utilizing free access. So most of these publishers have done so in a way to increase their brand awareness. So we'll start top left. That's the Daily Mail Plus, and they've extended the opportunity to engage with their Plus brand for another 2 months completely free, before most likely that goes behind their Premium Plus paywall solution. That means that you get newsletters into your inbox, the ability to interact with some of their exclusive video content, recipes. So that's a way in which they're extending their new offering that was launched in January to increase the brand awareness during these more difficult times. Below that, you've got the Financial Times. Most people on this call will be aware that they're a heavily gated and paid for newspaper brand. They've actually created a daily newsletter that is all around coronavirus, which you are free to sign up for, and you will be able to click through into those stories completely for free. Great way for them to introduce potential subscribers to their brand whilst also offering something that is compelling content-wise. Top right, we have our client here in the UK, outbreak Media, who operate in the Southeast, East Anglia and parts of the Midlands, a regional newspaper group with weeklies and some dailies. So they're doing something really interesting. They're providing free access to their apps and to their digital editions online if you've got a code which you can actually get from the printed newspapers. So a nice conjoined strategy there, ensuring that print sales can then lead to complementary digital access. And we're delivering that via a third-party API, so subscribers get the complimentary access. There's other nice things in there, like you can personalize what content you want to prioritize, maybe what area of the UK you're in, so you get that news delivered to you directly first, which e-papers are most important to you. So a nice initiative from outbreak Media. And the bottom right is another client of ours, which is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is a large daily paper based in the southern states of America. They had previously locked down their e-paper, both app and web, and it was a paid-for product, obviously because e-paper tends to be one of the more premium products in a publisher's arsenal. But they've opened that up to the public, and they have seen a large jump in both uniques and engagement across the different platforms in which we deliver their e-paper. It's been a great way for them to build their brand within their local market, gather some really valuable data and insight. And I expect with all of these brands, they're looking at the long tail success in the hope that people engage with them longer and therefore become subscribers down the line. A couple of other examples which we haven't got visuals of, but feel free to take a look at yourself. So Washington Post have also opened up a large part of their coronavirus coverage as they look to expand their reach globally outside of their state or even outside of just the US. And a large number of Brazilian papers. We're doing relatively well in South America now, so we've got good exposure down there. And we've seen that brands like Folha de Sao Paulo and a number of other regionals have started opening up their websites or their apps so that readers can get valuable content and then again look at potentially monetizing that down the line. Moving on to subscriptions, what have publishers been doing with those? Well, the Telegraph here in the UK, daily paper, and I believe it was Grazia magazine, are two of the brands that have allowed NHS workers to get complimentary subscriptions by emailing their teams from an NHS email address, and then they'll get them verified access, and then they can get access to their apps and their web product completely free as a thank you for the work that they're doing. So a really nice subscription initiative from those brands. In the States, a regional publisher that I keep a good eye on, which is Community Impact Newspapers, again, a Southern-based publisher. They create really high impact, beautifully designed newspapers, actually, for regional communities, but are heavily dependent on advertising. So within a very short space of time, they launched a community patron scheme, which is where people can contribute almost like a membership donation. And as you can see from the visual on their website there, in a very short space of time, we're talking weeks, they managed to get over 400 supporters contributing over $40,000 worth of revenue to them. And obviously important for regional publishers who have experienced big declines in print advertising. We've got publishers who we speak to who've had short-term reductions in their advertising in excess of 50%, so substantial amount that needs to be covered, and these patron type schemes are an interesting way of doing that. We work with a number of third parties actually as well who do similar things. You'll probably have seen them in your local market, people at MPP, Axate, Pigeon, HHNS, a number of others who can allow you to monetize digitally in this type of membership format. A client of ours, Daily Express, and a number of other UK nationals have launched a free delivery scheme for certain markets, so particularly those who are over 70 and couldn't leave their house. Great subscription offer where you get it delivered direct to your door for a period that hopefully will cover the pandemic. And it's a great way to ensure that maybe the older generations can keep up to date with trusted news brands. In the bottom middle, you can see that's a piece taken from Hold the Front Page, which is a news brand here in the UK that covers all of the national and regional media. And it's talking about how NewsQuest have launched paywalls on a number of their daily sites, and today they announced it on their weekly sites too. So right here in the UK with one of our clients, we're seeing a publisher move away from being pretty much completely free, apart from in certain markets, to actually looking at each of their titles and trying to monetize digitally with a monthly or an annual paywall option, which reduces the advertising exposure that readers get by 80%. So interesting to see how that take up goes. The final visual bottom right is a nice piece of data that we saw on LinkedIn from a third-party API that we integrate with, a vendor called Piano, who are like a paywall solution provider. And they've tracked across their brands in Europe and the US some key metrics looking at new subscriptions since the global pandemic declared. You'll see the gold line is the European brands that they work with, and the silver line is the US brands. And you can see since that Jan-Feb, moving into the start of March, there has been an increase in the number of new subscriptions that have been taken out. I really hope that those of you who do have digital paywalls or even print subscriptions are seeing a bump. Anecdotally, we're seeing that particularly regional newspapers may be experiencing between 5 and 10% increase, but some of the bigger magazine brands that we're working with have experienced even higher demand than that, which is really positive to see. And although it won't necessarily completely negate some of the advertising declines, is important. Although I was reading on DigiDay that Mather Economics was suggesting that potentially this is a short-term bump, much in the same way that in 2018, when Trump came to power in the US, there was the Trump bump for subscriptions. but only time will tell, and we keep working with people on ensuring we can maximise as much as we can. A couple of other examples that weren't visualised here, but I can talk through. So a number of newspaper brands and magazine brands that we work with quite logically are increasing the types of subscriber that get access to their premium products. So quite often the e-paper and the apps are in the top tier of a subscription package, and were predominantly left to those highest value subscribers. In the current climate, what we're seeing is publishers work with us and with their subscription systems to open that up to a larger percentage of their subscribers, which, okay, it's not about acquisition, but it's definitely about retention and offering value to those maybe mid-tier subscribers. And that's of option to many of our clients, and I suggest you talk to us or your vendors to help do that if that's of interest. So advertising, I'm not going to dwell too long on this because I'm sure everybody knows that this has been a really hard part of the market. As I said, some papers who we've spoken to have experienced catastrophic declines. In reality, this data is taken from Press Gazette and eMarketer, and it's a recent article where they looked at UK, US and Canadian digital advertising spend, and they predicted in a moderate case scenario and a severe case scenario how much that digital advertising display wise is going to decline compared to half one 2019 into half one 2020. And you can see 8.5% is the best case with the moderate scenario, and nearly 15.6% on a severe decline. Obviously, big impact to publishers' bottom lines if that were to take into effect. And like I said, we're not necessarily here on this webinar to reflect on that. What we want to do is actually provide some examples and some solutions. So what I've got here, starting on the left-hand side, is a really nice collaborative effort that we've seen in Australian media by brands like Foxtel, News Corp, 10, 9 Media, 7 West Media, all pulling together and creating a campaign labeled "When They Go Dark, the Spotlight Is Yours." And essentially what they're doing is they're referencing some really important advertising research that shows that during the last recession, 2008, those advertisers who stuck with trusted media brands came out of it in a stronger position than those that deserted. And I think that's an important message that in any market is worth reiterating to advertisers, that to completely disappear, even if you're not selling, may do some damage to your brand, or give your competitors who are staying in the marketplace when it comes to advertising the upper hand as soon as we come out of it. Another nice example is the blue and yellow visual you can see there, local marketing grant program. That's run by Lee Enterprises, who are a regional publisher in the US. And what they're doing is they're pledging up to $250,000 in grants to those advertisers who stick with them and spend during April, May and June. Fantastic effort, giving advertisers increased exposure across their portfolio of brands whilst retaining the advertising spend. And as you can see, they're pushing the message that those businesses who they partner with are the heartbeat of the community, and really important win-win effort for them to stay together. Here in the UK government have actually put a large amount of spend into their advertising campaign all around staying at home. So whether you pick up a regional daily or one of the nationals, you will see a large amount of NHS or government advertising in there, promoting people to stay at home, which will no doubt have gone some way into enabling publishers to keep going with that revenue coming in from direct sales advertising through the government. I hope in other markets, governments or other local brands are sticking with you in the same way. Newsday is a really big client of ours in the States. Their publishing brand is targeted towards the Long Island area of New York. So they have a lot of advertisers who are retailers or restaurateurs or leisure facilities that have been severely impacted. If any of you have seen the news, you'll see that New York has been massively hit when it comes to the coronavirus impacting the States. And they are part of New York, and their news brand is for those types of readers who are being severely impacted, and their advertisers are in amongst it as well. So what they're doing is they're providing those businesses with really excellent insight into how they can apply for loans, how they can apply for, in this case, you can see the visual, the Paycheck Protection Program, economic injury, disaster loans. So they're not selling them advertising. They're not even talking about publishing content. They're just providing really useful local information direct to the advertisers. They're doing it over webinars. They're putting together video content as well. So supporting the people that have supported them. Really good program. Most of the bullet points here I've talked about in the visuals and reflected. The one other piece that's worth mentioning is that advertising sales teams, we're hearing maybe if there isn't as much display advertising to be sold, are starting to try and work with brands more on content marketing. So obviously, if a brand isn't necessarily selling or they close their operations, they hope to return after the pandemic. So creating content around maybe their social or corporate social responsibility, maybe some good news stories, will help that business make a bounce back when the market's open. So content marketing could be an option too if display is declining. Distribution. So whilst I love physical printed newspapers, in many markets that we have clients, whether it be actually printing the newspaper or then distributing it to home or to retailers, have stopped or slowed down dramatically. There's a number of regional titles here in the UK that have stopped. I know the same in other markets like in Africa and the Caribbean where we have clients. There have been really significant print and distribution challenges. And obviously the e-paper then comes into that. So the visual below that is actually taken from our website. It's where we managed to get 5 daily newspapers in Mauritius live within 24 hours during this pandemic because they had similar print and distribution challenges. Obviously, that type of e-paper solution can be put behind a paywall, or you can put it behind a data wall, or you can completely open it up for your readers to get access to. And it replaces the physical because it is an exact replica of that. If you've got multi-title, then something like the Flip brand you see there in the middle with the magazines replaces a physical newsstand because you can combine multiple brands in a single place, be that a PWA web product or a native app, iOS or Android. And you can also sell it in different ways. So Egmont, who produced this Flip brand in a number of the Scandinavian markets, sell individual title access. So you can subscribe to Bogolive or Euromain or Rum or Fit magazine on a per brand basis, or like Netflix, you can actually get an all-you-can-eat monthly fee that gives you access to everything, and then you have individual profiles. So again, if you're a multi-title publisher with distribution challenges, creating a digital kiosk is a way to replace a physical newsstand to a certain degree. The top right is some data we managed to get, and it was actually from News and Tech, which is a US media covering website, and it talks about the web distribution, and that is surging. And obviously, we're seeing increased demand within our e-paper and our app platforms as well. But no doubt your websites are seeing increased traffic, which is great news when it comes to trying to build engagement, build brand awareness. And if you're selling subscriptions on that, obviously if you're getting 100+ increases in monthly traffic, that's a captive audience which you can feed down your funnel into being a paying subscriber. The last example that we've got a visual of here is the Evening Standard. It's a commuter paper in London, and you pick it up if you're traveling into London from one of the train stations or the tube stations for free. Obviously, therefore, it is very advertising centric. 90–95% of their revenues probably come from print advertising, even though they have a digital offering. And they could not see that completely disappear because they have a business to run, and they've got there is an economic viability to trying to sustain this. So they actually started delivering it to the different zones in London to ensure that their print product maintained some semblance of a circulation whilst people were staying from home. People weren't commuting into the city for work or for leisure. The other examples, in distribution that haven't got visuals, they include the Tampa Bay Times, the US paper. They've in the short term gone to a Sunday, Wednesday print schedule. And that's interesting because obviously you could potentially use digital solutions to fill in those other days. And I can touch on a bit of an example on that later. So content. Well, we've seen brands like Men's Health in the magazine market actually do cover stories specifically related to medical workers and the tackle on coronavirus, which is quite a remove from their typical front cover. And obviously newspapers have now got whole dedicated coronavirus sections on their website. In the print product, there's a lot of coverage around it too. But what I thought would be more interesting, rather than just present a deluge of coronavirus coverage, was actually how some publishers have responded more to the challenge in general. So the first off is the Racing Post, which is a sports daily paper here in the UK. Sports has ground to a halt here, as it has in many other markets. So how do you produce a newspaper when what you cover is no longer in existence? Well, they don't print it in the short term for one. Obviously, there's a hope that that will return. But they use our platform to create digital-only editions on the web and in app, and offer their subscribers some edition-based content every single day. So there is still the coverage of racing, football, but more from a political and economic angle. But they're delving into their archives, which I think I've often said on other webinars is where publishers have huge advantage over the social media giants, because they're all about today. Lots of our news brands have got hundreds of years worth of archive. And delving into that, offering that to subscribers, a really strong value add. Second up is the Dallas Morning News. That's the iPad example. They publish their e-paper like they used to do, like they do with their print every single morning, get huge peaks and spikes in traffic to the tablet app and to the e-paper in the morning with the e-paper. But actually, their teams are still creating content through the day. I actually saw that they managed to create a whole print edition purely based from people working from home, which is no mean feat, and I congratulate anyone who's doing that, because that must be an interesting way of putting together a paper, but I'm sure that's what a lot of people are having to do. But they also put together an evening edition, which is a digital only product. It's got that cover to cover experience like their print, which really strongly resonates as a piece of high value content and is aiding their subscription retention strategy, because it's giving subscribers something extra, which particularly in these times are very important to do if you can. The third visual I've referenced once already is Newsday, who are the people on Long Island doing the webinars for their advertisers, providing more holistic information. But of course, they are doing coronavirus coverage. The interesting thing is, you'd think that actually, with a lot of people staying at home, mobile would drop. Broadly speaking, across our markets, we're seeing mobile usage and penetration still increase. Newsday have also invested heavily into video content production, so you get that deeper level of engagement in a storytelling sense, exclusively for subscribers. And then the fourth visual is a magazine brand. Actually, it's Executive Grapevine, who are a leading brand for C-level execs and HR professionals. And their content now has a really broad appeal, because anybody in business is now looking at workplace culture, because the workplace has shifted dramatically. CEOs are under a huge amount of pressure in terms of organizational change. You've got changes to remuneration and the furlough schemes. So they've relaunched their app on our live newsfeed platform. And what that allows their readers to do is have real deep levels of personalization. They can completely personalize how their content appears in the app. And we've also got it syncing back. That level of personalization syncs with their website as well. So that's driving an even higher level of engagement, because no matter whether you view the content on the website or in the app, that personalization remains, which has been great. So last week it was World Press Freedom Day 2, and whilst we, and particularly me, from a PageSpeak business perspective, tend to talk more to marketing and operations, we obviously have an editorial element to our output. And whether that's the curation of the Dallas Morning News Evening Edition, or it's the way that the live news feeds pull into our feed apps, it's really important for us to understand how changes in editorial are being reflected at the moment as well. And I've found some excellent pieces on whether that's on Al Jazeera or on journalism.co.uk or individual publishers branding, actually about how a journalist struggling in these times to cover pieces. You know, you can't get out and interrogate politicians in the same way. You can't attend press conferences in the same way that you could do. Newsrooms aren't collaborating together in the same physical space as they used to. I think there's a whole amount of change that we're in the midst of, which will be completely different in all corners of the world, I'm sure. But essentially, journalism now is probably an even more difficult challenge because of the restrictions that are being placed on us from COVID-19. So the storytelling side of things is really difficult. And what I think publishers could do more of is actually ensure their readers understand that value and the lengths that publishers have to go to now in these circumstances to actually bring them the news. Whether that be actual written content, but photography and video and investigative reporting, I can only imagine now is more difficult than it has ever been. Tied into that, from the challenging perspective, is organisational challenges. So here in the UK, we've seen people like DMGT, who own Daily Mail, big daily paper. They've offered their staff shares in exchange for a pay reduction in a way to sort of reduce cash burn. You've also got a number of publishers furloughing staff. I'm not actually sure if there are any here in the UK who haven't, to be brutally honest, and somebody can tell me otherwise. But there's a couple of visuals here from brands like Press Gazette, the Guardian's own website, about the extent that they've had to put staff on the furlough scheme. For those people who aren't in the UK and don't know what the furlough scheme is, essentially it's the UK government paying up to 80% of certain sectors' staff who are unable to work with certain contractual conditions. And obviously publishers are doing that at the moment because they've had revenue declines. So it's a way in which that they don't have to keep the cash burn going during these more difficult times. The other organisational challenges and responses to that we've seen, so the Facebook Journalism Project has launched, and it's essentially a relief fund that local news publishers can tap into, and Google News Initiative have done something similar. On the more positive side of things, a client of ours, good news, it's relative, I guess, but Jewish Chronicle came out of administration when it was looking like difficult times for them, so that's a light relief. They've managed to stave off that and hopefully coming out stronger, which is great news to see trusted news brand maintain. And then in North America, you've got brands like Seattle Times who've managed to secure government loans. Again, good news is relative. I'm not saying that is something we should be shouting about from the rafters, but no doubt gives them some breathing space, which is good to hear. So moving to the close of the webinar, this is our final section, and it's everything else that we've seen during the pandemic. It's been a busy couple of months, but actually one of the most important pieces that I've seen is Australia, again, touching on their media companies. They followed French media in pushing Google and Facebook hard to share some of the revenues that's generated on their platform driven from news content. I think that is massive. And I think every other marketplace should be doing something similar, because it's a way in which you can claw back some of the revenues that have been lost to the digital duopoly over the years. And I really am pleased to see the French and the Australian market taking the initiative on that, and hasn't had a huge amount of coverage, mainly because of what's been happening, no doubt, but hopefully other markets will do something similar. For those of you that don't recognise the second visual, that's Hearst Towers, and through the Hearst Foundation, they made a $50 million donation to the US efforts to tackle coronavirus. So good news and good efforts from them. Then the three visuals that loop round the blue, so you've got the Juntos Vamos visual with O Globo, followed to Sao Paulo Agora. You've got the visual below, which is UK titles, East Anglian, Cambridge News, Dorset Echo, and then top right you've got Clarion, BAE, Pagina 12. What this is representative of is three different markets. So you've got Argentina, Brazil, and the UK, all of their different media companies coming together and pushing a singular message to their audiences, regardless of who actually produced the paper, which I think was a really good thing to do. Certainly generated some good coverage here in the UK when the likes of JP, ILIF, Archant, NewsQuest pulled together and did that. NewsQuest have also gone a step further, which is the final visual in the bottom right, which is a really nice touch. So all of their mastheads turn blue in support of the NHS because that's the colour of the NHS branding. So good positive to end the webinar on. The one other thing that I just wanted to mention before we go to the Q&A is we feel we're quite well placed to help you, newspapers, magazines, large or small, in these tough times. If your strategy is changing, if you need to maximize your limited resources, if you need to engage your subscribers and your advertisers, please do get in touch with us. We're happy to help regardless of whether you're a client or not. That's why we do things like this, to provide some ideas, some inspiration, so that you can take it home and hopefully utilize. But what I'll do now is go onto my question screen and ask any of you who are interested to send any more questions whilst I read through these. So first question is, are we finding that the live news style apps or the e-paper apps are getting higher engagement times? Good question. I think a lot of our newspapers and magazine publishers have marketed the digital editions really well so that it comes out at a certain time, day, week or month, and it resonates with readers as soon as it hits their inbox or is delivered to their app. So we're still seeing the early morning spikes for the morning papers, for instance, of the e-paper. The live news, as I said, I think we sort of thought maybe mobile usage would drop during this because people are at home, there's less commuting going on, but actually week on week, month on month, mobile traffic and mobile penetration is still increasing. I think obviously with things like push notifications and that need to feel instantly connected, having live news feeds within the product still is important too. How easily can we create Corona editions? Yeah, so you can use a number of solutions that we offer to create specials. So the closest reference to that is the Dallas Morning News, who produce an evening edition. But if you're a brand and you want to just create a Corona edition based on that content, you could use our edition platform to do that from digital content. Or if you wanted to spin off a separate news brand or a business section, sports section, you could do that too. Okay, question, we have our own apps. Is there a way to include the e-paper? Yeah, so this is very common at the moment. If you're in a marketplace where print and distribution is a challenge and you haven't got an e-paper, but you do have your own live newsfeed products, we can offer you an SDK of the e-paper that you can plug into your live newsfeed app so that your readers can get the digital edition on their device, be it mobile or tablet. Just to further enhance that answer, if I may, you can then put that behind your paywall, or you can open it up. You can follow the same strategy as your existing app, or you can offer a completely different strategy. There's flexibility within that. Okay. Does your publish systems for live news? Yep, we've got the PageSuite CMS can create an output that's live news feed based, which is particularly relevant for apps, be they mobile or tablet. And you can plug that in with the e-paper or not. You can have optimized digital editions with that or not. The choice is yours. Okay, any other questions? Do we have any artificial intelligence in helping with personalized marketing? Interesting question. The research and development team that we have at PageSuite is always investigating ways in which we can better understand readers, how we could potentially help turn them into subscribers, for instance. And to your point there with personalization, understanding how many people use personalization in the app, does that lead to higher levels of engagement? So we try and plug in with pretty comprehensive analytic solutions to enable us to get a deeper understanding of that. And I would say, although we don't exclusively say we've got an artificial intelligence solution, we can talk through some ideas and help deliver on that strategy for you. And again, if you're a client or not a client, get in touch and we can talk it over and provide you some ideas. Okay, so before I go, okay, one more question, sorry. Is there an opportunity to have a demonstration of how to convert print publications using PageSpeed? Yes, of course. So if you're interested in anything that we've talked about today and you want more information, email hello@pagesuite.com. The person who's asked that question, I can pass your request on to somebody in one of our teams here who can get some content, sample content from you, and can create you a demo and show you how easy it is to do that. The other thing we've got before we go is our marketing team have recently launched a digital roundtable. We used to do these in person, but obviously more difficult now. We're limiting them to 6 per session, and it's going to be with our product director, Simon Fry, who was instrumental in the independence move from print publisher to a digital publisher. We've managed to bring him into the team at the back end of last year. He's worked with a load of other publishers, traditional media and new media, and he's leading those sessions. If you're interested in joining one of those roundtable debates with him that can help shape our roadmap, then again, get in touch, hello@pagesuite.com. We're doing them on a region by region basis. So we're doing a North American one, a European one, South American, African, Asian, Australasian, because of the spread of our clientele and the differences that we see in those markets. So for those of you that are here, thank you very much, and really appreciate your time. Hope that you're doing as well as you can. Family stay well. Any questions, please get in touch after. All the best. Bye-bye.